welcome back. Today I'm going to be reading you chapters 16, 17, and 18. Remember, feel free to pause or rewatch any of these chapters if you need a break. All right, chapter 16, DJ. DJ skipped up the 30 flights of stairs to Mrs. Jewels's room. He was grinning from ear to ear, from nose to chin, from here to there, and back again. "Hey, DJ," Todd shouted. "I'm glad to see you." Todd was a pushover for smiling faces. Mrs. Jewels heard him. She began to write Todd's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. But when she saw DJ smile, she put down the chalk. "Good morning, DJ," she said. "What are you so happy about?" DJ grinned and shrugged his shoulders. Mrs. Jewels smiled. Damien looked at the smile on Mrs. Jewels' face, then at Todd's, and finally at DJ's. Then Damien smiled too. His smile was almost as big as DJ's. They were best friends. Once they saw the two of them smiling, the rest of the class couldn't help but smile. Rondi had a very cute one due to her two missing teeth, remember? Nobody had an ugly smile in the class. Jason came to school late. He was very upset. But the first thing he saw was Damien's smile, and he felt a little bit better. Then he saw Rondi's toothless grin, and he even began to smile a little himself. But when he saw the piano on DJ's face, he fell laughing on the floor. What do you think that means, a piano on his face? Think about how piano keys look. Everybody else started to laugh, even Kathy, and she hardly ever laughed except when someone hurt himself. The whole room seemed to be laughing, not just the people in it. The blackboard chuckled, the ceiling snickered, the desks were jumping up and down, and the chairs were slapping one another on the back. The floor was very ticklish. It laughed until the walls turned purple. The waste paper basket started to sing, and all the pencils stood up dancing. Finally, things began to settle down. Mrs. Jewels wiped her eyes and said, "DJ, why don't you tell the class why you are so happy? At least let us know what we are laughing about." But DJ just kept on smiling. "Aw, come on, DJ," said Dee Dee. "Tell us." DJ didn't say a word. He couldn't. His mouth was stretched out of shape. "Let us guess," said Ron. If we guess right, will you tell us?" DJ nodded his head. His smile began to hurt his ears. Everyone took one guess. So if we were in the classroom together, I would ask all of you to turn and talk and guess, why do you think DJ is smiling? So either pause and think about that, or keep listening and let's find out. Have you been swimming? Is it your birthday? Are you in love? Did you get a green ball at recess? Nobody's guess was right. At recess, DJ was still smiling. Louis, the yard teacher, called out, "Hey, DJ, come here." They walked to the far corner of the playground where they were all alone. "What's up, DJ?" Louis asked. DJ just smiled. "Come on, DJ, you can tell me. Why are you so happy?" DJ looked up at him. He said, "You need a reason to be sad. You don't need a reason to be happy." So he was just happy just because. All right, chapter 17. John. John had light brown hair and a round head. He was Joe's best friend. John was one of the smartest boys in Mrs. Jewels' class, but he had one problem. He could only read words written upside down. Nobody ever wrote anything upside down. But it was only a little problem. John was still in the highest reading group. He just turned his book upside down. It was easier for John to turn his book upside down than to learn how to read correctly. but the easiest way isn't always the best way. Mrs. Jewls said, John, you can't go on reading like this. You can't spend the rest of your life turning your books upside down. Why not? Asked John. Because I said so, said Mrs. Jewls. Besides, what happens when I write something on the blackboard? You can't turn the blackboard upside down. No, I guess you're right, said John. I know I'm right, said Mrs. Jewls. You are going to have to learn to stand on your head. John couldn't stand on his head. He had given up trying. You would have to if you had fallen over as many times as he had. Joe was John's best friend. He could stand on John's head. Every time John fell over, Joe stood on his head. After all, what are best friends for? My head is too round, Mrs. Jewls. I can't stand on it, said John. Of course you can, John, said Mrs. Jewls. If Joe can stand on your head, so can you. It's easy, John, said Joe. I can't, John repeated. I always fall over. Nonsense, said Mrs. Jewls. All you have to do is find your center of balance. Now, up you go. John put his round head on the floor and swung his legs up. He fell right over. Then Joe stood on John's head. See, John, it's easy. Nothing to it. We'll help you, John, said Mrs. Jewls. Joe, get off John's head and go get me the pillow from under my desk. I wonder why there's a pillow under her desk. Nancy, Calvin, come here and give us a hand. Mrs. Jewls took the pillow from Joe and set it on the floor. All right, John, we'll surround you, she said. We won't let you fall. John put his head on the pillow and swung his legs up. He started to fall one way, but Nancy pushed him back. Then he started to fall the other way, but Calvin straightened him out. John kept falling a little bit this way and a little. At last, he found his center of balance. I'm going to show you the words on this page. Do you see what happened? So now I have to turn it and read it. Let's see. Hey, look at me! Look at me, said John. I'm up. I'm really up. I'm standing on my head. I found my center of balance. It's beautiful. I can read the blackboard. Hey, Calvin, bring me a book. And you don't have to turn it upside down. Ha ha. Hey, who? Ah! Bam! While Calvin went to get the book, John fell flat on his face. You better stay off my head, Joe, he warned. Are you all right, John? Asked Mrs. Jewls. Yes, I think so. I feel a little funny. Hey, I can still read the blackboard, and I'm not upside down anymore. I can read right side up now. When I fell, I must have flipped my brain or something. Oh, that's wonderful news, said Mrs. Jewls. Here, put the pillow back under my desk. As a reward, you may have a Tootsie Roll Pop. They are in the coffee can on top of my desk. John placed the pillow on top of her desk. Then he looked under her desk, but he couldn't find the Tootsie Roll Pops anywhere. See what happened there? She said, put the pillow under my desk, get the Tootsie Roll Pop on top of my desk, and he did the opposite. So when he hit his head, he might have flipped his brain so he can read now, but something else is a little off. All right, 18, Leslie. Leslie had 5 fingers on each hand and 5 toes on each foot. For each hand, she had an arm, and for each foot, she had a leg. She was a very lucky girl. So it seems normal so far. And she had 2 lovely long brown pigtails that reached all the way down to her waist. When Mrs. Jewls asked a question, Leslie could raise one of her hands. When Leslie was adding, she could count on her fingers. When Paul pulled one of her pigtails, she could kick him with one foot while standing on the other. But Leslie had one problem. She didn't know what to do with her toes. She had 10 adorable little toes and nothing to do with them. As far as she could tell, they served no useful purpose. Suck your toes, Leslie. That's what I do, said Sherry. but Leslie's foot wouldn't reach her mouth. Well, that's all toes are good for, said Sherry. She put her foot in her mouth and went to sleep. No, thought Leslie, they must be good for something else. They just have to be. During recess, she asked Dana, Dana, what do you do with your toes? I scratch the back of my legs with them, said Dana. First I scratch my left leg with my right foot, then I scratch my right leg with my left foot. But my legs don't itch, said Leslie. Well, that's good, said Dana. In that case, you can scratch my legs. With your help, I can scratch both legs at the same time. No, never mind, said Leslie. She walked up behind Louis, the yard teacher, and hopped on his shoulders. Louis, said Leslie, I don't know what to do with my toes. Louis tugged her foot. Yes, that's a serious problem, he said. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take them off your hands for you, or rather, your feet. Just cut them off and give them to me. What? Asked Leslie. You don't want them, so I'll take them, said Louis. You won't have to worry about them ever again. No, said Leslie. I'll give them to Miss Mush, said Louis. She can make little hot dogs out of them. Miss Mush was the lunch teacher at Wayside School. No, I'm not going to give my toes away, said Leslie. All right, said Louis. How about I give you a nickel apiece for them? No, you can't have them, said Leslie. Why not? Louis asked. They're no good to you anyhow. And think of all you can buy with 50 cents. The bell rang. I'll think it over, said Leslie. She ran back to class. Mrs. Jewls, said Leslie, I don't see any reason for keeping my toes. Oh, Leslie, I'm sure there are lots of good reasons, said Mrs. Jewls. Well, I can't think of any. My legs don't itch, and I can't get my foot in my mouth. Louis offered me a nickel apiece for them, and it seems to me like a good idea. But I wanted to check with you first. I think Louis was pulling your leg, said Mrs. Jewls. Do you know what that phrase means? If someone's pulling your leg, they're kind of, they're kidding around. No, said Leslie. He was pulling my toes. What would he want with your toes? Asked Mrs. Jewls. I don't know, said Leslie. But if he's willing to give me 5 cents apiece for them, then I'm going to take him up on that. That's 50 cents. At lunch, Leslie walked up to Louis. Okay, Louis, she said. You can have my toes for a nickel apiece. That will be 50 cents. Not so fast, said Louis. Let me look at them first. Leslie took off her shoes. Yes, said Louis. The big ones are good, and the ones next to them. But the most I'll give you for the rest of your toes are 3 cents each. Leslie was furious. 3 cents each? You told me 5 at recess. I'll give you 5 cents for the big ones. But just look at that scrawny little runt of a toe at the end there. You're lucky to be getting even 3 cents for it. I think you're getting a darn good deal here. I happen to like that toe, said Leslie. Fine then, said Louis. Keep it. I'll just take the 2 big toes and we'll call it square. He reached in his pocket and pulled out a dime. Nothing doing, said Leslie. These toes are sold as a set. It's either all 10 for 50 cents or no deal. What am I going to do with just 8 toes? Then forget it, said Louis. I'm not going to give you a nickel for those scrawny little end toes. Fine, said Leslie. No deal. My toes will still be here if you change your mind. She turned and walked toward the hopscotch area. Wait a second, Louis called. I'll give you $1 each for your pigtails. Leslie turned around and looked at him with fiery eyes. Cut my hair? She exclaimed. Are you crazy? See you next time. There's Howie. Bye, guys.